Allie Finale Studios. Game reviews.
Final Fantasy 15. It's beautiful, and it's a mess. It's a beautiful mess. Well, we love it anyway. I'm here today to talk about the DLC for Final Fantasy 15, episode Ardyn, where you play as the main game's villain. Now, for me, in this review, I'm just going to talk casually about it. No script, just bullet points this time, so let me know in the comments below if you like a more improv-style review or if you prefer my more structured reviews. Just a heads up for this little casual review, there will be spoilers for Final Fantasy 15 and for the episode Ardyn DLC, so if you haven't played it, what are you doing? Go play it right now. I'll wait. No.
Here's some positive points for the DLC.
It is so satisfying to zip around as the villain from Final Fantasy 15. The way he smooth as butter just takes down enemies is super satisfying. This DLC was very short. It only clocked in at about 2 to 4 hours, so if you have time, you could totally knock it out in one day. I kind of milked it because I'm an Ardyn fan.
I was frozen today!
First, I was interested to see how Ardyn ended up working with Ifrit, and this DLC answered that question. But why did they make him hot? I mean, I'm not mad, just why? Yoo-hoo indeed, Ardyn. As handsome as most of these characters are, there were some major story and writing gripes that I did have.
I really wanted to see more of Ardyn before the Star Scourge affected him. I wanted to see him interacting with the people, being the savior that they talked about in the legends. How it differed from how his brother interacted with the people. Why everyone wanted Ardyn to be king instead of Somnus. I feel like if they illustrated that a little bit better, it would have really hit home the fact that Ardyn got the throne ripped away from him, and it would have made that more heartbreaking. To add on to that, I wanted to see more of the relationship between Somnus and Ardyn. Maybe see something with a friendly rivalry, or of them just in day-to-day existence, because we didn't get to see much of that. We saw the bitter after effects of the decisions that Ardyn and Somnus and Era made, but we didn't really get to see them interacting as brothers, and I feel like for a story about being betrayed by your brother, it was really missing that to hit it home. If they had established that connection and that relationship earlier on, then you could have seen how they evolved and how they changed throughout the story. What made Somnus want to take over the throne when he knew darn well that Ardyn was going to get it, that the people loved him more? Did that jealousy fuel him, or was it some event that triggered this? Speaking of connections, we only got one scene with Era and Ardyn, which is a shame because I really was looking forward to seeing their relationship the most. Especially when you see how she gets ripped from him later on in the story. It's so tragic, and yet it was hard to feel anything because we only got recently introduced to her, and we only have one scene between them, and that wasn't enough to really cement the love between these two people and how tragic it is that he had her taken from him. Now, if they had shown a scene with them working together as Oracle and Savior to cure the Star Scourge, that would have added something to it. I would have loved to have seen maybe how they met, just a couple more romantic moments to cement that, because much like Somnus, she felt like a cardboard cutout. That was a problem in the main game in Final Fantasy 15. The 4 main boys were well fleshed out, and then everyone else got relegated to like one-note characters, which is unfortunate because they had some really great ideas.
With some of the QuickTime events, you really feel the futility of Ardyn's fate. Like, no matter what choice you make, he's still going to have the same fate at the end of it. It was a nice touch. The takeaway from this story, the gods are dicks.
Okay, one thing that was adorable in this DLC was getting the different hats for Ardyn. I loved getting to try on different ones and getting different powers based off of those hats. That was a nice little touch. Especially considering that he's so mysterious and fashion forward. That it just seemed to fit his character, that he would put on these random hats and just go tromping around the city, killing people and having a blast. Because why not? If you're a villain, you're gonna look fashionable. Especially love the hard hat or the Santa hat. That was so silly. And they brought back the incredible Darren DePaul to voice Ardyn again, with his velvety smooth voice. You can tell that that man is having the time of his life playing Ardyn, and it shows in every line of dialogue. The bosses weren't difficult at all. It's a shame because I actually wanted the boss, Somnus, to be a challenge. But I liked what they were going for. I could tell that Ardyn was venting. He was getting all those years of frustration out. And that was a really cool concept to me. But I will launch into my next complaint with this. Sound design. Sound engineering. It is a huge issue in these games. Oh my goodness. The entire series has had a problem with the background music being way louder than the characters speaking. It was a problem in Final Fantasy XV. The moment where Noctis is getting sucked into the crystal and Ardyn is revealing who he is. He's a member of the royal family. You cannot hear a word of dialogue he is saying because the background music is too loud. And it's frustrating because that's one of the most important scenes in the game. I'm just going to show you a clip of it here.
You'll never guess his name this video was. Killing his immortal will bring me swift satisfaction. Playing Crystal's power, arise as its champion.
It illustrates how important sound engineering, being done properly, is. Episode Ardyn had its fair share of issues with that as well. There were moments during cutscenes and boss scenes where I could not hear anything that the characters were saying. And that was a real disappointment because I wanted to know what was going on. I want to be invested, but all I hear is bom, bom, bom in the background. Sorry, Darren DePaul. It was hard to hear you. It's not your fault.
To think I get the pleasure of killing you myself. What's wrong, dear brother? Too afraid to put down your expensive toy and come face me yourself? Let the game begin.
Overall, I was irritated at the end of episode Ardyn because they came so close to having something really special and they just barely missed the mark. A lot of people were disappointed with Final Fantasy XV for the same reason. Most people will not want to read a book, watch an anime, and play all of these extras in order to get the full game's story. Maybe if this and 15 had a rewrite, they could have been more coherent. As is, I like them. Are they as memorable as 10 or say 7? Not for me, not just yet.
The really big takeaway from this is that I wish that they had established Ardyn's current relationships with his brother, with Era, with the Lucius line a little bit more. If they had just added a few more scenes, or even just the scenes they had, because we spent so long in that lab that we didn't need all of that. We really wanted to see more of Ardyn, who he was before, how he got to this point. And it's painful because I know that they had so many development issues and really limited time to push these DLCs out. And I'm very grateful that they actually got Ardyn out because Ardyn was one of my favorite characters from the original series. But it's just a shame if they had just added a scene or two of establishing relationships a little bit more. I feel like I would have grown to know these characters like Era and Somnus, and I would have felt more for Ardyn. Because as it was, even though I love the character of Ardyn, he's so wily and charismatic and smarter than pretty much anybody else in the series. Even though he was brought to his lowest point in this DLC, it was still hard to feel for it because we didn't get those other establishing connections as well. And that's a shame. But I understand that they were under a time crunch, so that's just my piece about it. But they do delve a little bit into those details in the novel, which I'm currently reading right now. So if you guys would like for me to talk about that, I can do a review on that as well. It details stuff about Luna Freya and Aranea, and possibly an alternative ending to the original Final Fantasy XV game, which they were going to make it almost a choice back when they were first developing it, when Mamoru was on the crew, but it got put through development hell and they could only do so much. So this is kind of their way of satisfying the fans for an alternative ending, which it's very interesting. So if you guys would like for me to talk at length, please leave a comment below. And as always, thank you for watching.
Look at his little Jack Sparrow run. You go, buddy. Did you enjoy this game review? Like and subscribe. Want to talk more games and movies with me? Leave a comment below. Until next time, my charming creatures, Allie over and out.